Right, so question 2. A circle has an equation, a line with an equation intersects a circle at points A and B. Find the coordinates of the 2 points of intersection. Like any two equations that we're trying to solve, the points of intersection are the solutions, simultaneous solutions for the equations, and we can use substitution or elimination to do that. In this particular case, though, we can't use elimination because there's squared variables and not in both of them. So we have to use substitution. We're going to take the second equation, y equals x minus 9, and substitute it into the first equation, and that is a great place to start. So we have x minus 1 squared plus, and instead of y, we're going to put x minus 9 plus 4 squared equals 40. All right, so that's what we're trying to solve. It is a quadratic in terms of x. We just have to simplify it and then try to solve it. So the first brackets, x minus 1 squared, we'll expand that and get x squared minus 2x plus 1. The second brackets, when we have the negative 9 plus 4, turns into x minus 5. And so when we square x minus 5, again, we'll get x squared and minus 10x, 2 5s are 10, and negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. So we have plus 25, and that equals 40. So we've done a fair bit of work just in our heads, which is quite okay. X squared plus x squared becomes 2x squared. We've got negative 2x minus 10x turns into minus 12x. We have 1 plus 25 is 26, and then the 40 is going to come over and subtract from 26, and that will leave us with negative 14 equals 0. Okay, we can make that quadratic even simpler, dividing both sides of the equation by 2, and of course that 2 divided by 2 gets distributed to every term, and so we just end up with x squared minus 6x minus 7 equals to 0. What multiplies to negative 7 adds to negative 6? That would be x minus 7 and x plus 1. So therefore we have two x values, x equals negative 1, let's start with that one, or x is 7. How do we find the y values? We put the x values back into either equation. One of the equations is certainly a lot simpler than the other one, that's the y equals x minus 9. So let's just use that one, and we'll get negative 1 minus 9 is negative 10, and 7 minus 9, so doing y, is negative 2. So there's our 2 points. Find the coordinates of the 2 points of intersection. Always check the question to make sure you're answering it. And so our points are going to be negative 1, negative 10, and 7, negative 2. It's nice that it worked out. Okay, part B, find an equation of the circle with the diameter AB. I've taken out 2 points because they are the points A and B. Right, if we have a circle with that diameter, we know the center of the circle is halfway between the points A and B, and we want to find the radius. We have those two things, the center and the radius. We can write an equation of the circle. Right, so the first thing let's find the center, and that's the midpoint. So the midpoint, you may remember a formula, which is, you don't have to write the formulas, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. I don't think Cambridge mind too much about writing formulas or not. So if we have negative 1 plus 7, we get 6, and we divide it by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. We have negative 10 minus 2 is negative 12, divided by 2 is negative 6, right? So that's our midpoint, which is the center of the circle. All right, to find the radius of the circle, we want to find the distance between these 2 points, and the distance formula is, of course, the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, which is a variation of Pythagoras' theorem. All right, let's work this one out. We've got, let's work a bit out as we go. Let's take our second point as x2. So we're going to have 7 minus 1 is going to be 8. And so we'll have 8 squared. Why write 8 squared? We can just write 64. And y2 minus y1, we've got negative 2 minus negative 10 turns into 8 again, because negative, when you minus a negative, you add, so it's negative 2 plus 10, and that turns into 8, and we're squaring 8 again, so we'll get 64. We didn't need such a long, right? So the diameter, which is also the distance between the points, so that d is quite handy there, is the square root of 128, but the square root of 128 is the square root of 2 times 64. 64 times 2. We're just going to make this third in simplest form. Square root of 64 is 8, and so we'll get 8 root 2, which is kind of handy because the radius is half of that, and so our radius is going to be 4 root 2. All right, now we have the radius, we have the midpoint, then the equation of the circle is our last final step. The circle is going to be x minus the x value of the midpoint, which is 3 squared, plus y minus the y value of the midpoint, which of course turns into plus because it's subtracting a negative squared, and that equals r squared. We square that, we get 4 squared is 16, and root 2 squared is 2, and 2 times 16 is 32, and so we'll have 32. And question done.